For the last day I have been non-stop coding. Yes, really look at this. And what have I been coding, you may ask? Well, I don't know either. This is day one of making a video game without a game engine. So for my language I decided I would go for Python with Pygame, as most of my other projects use Python. And for the game, one used the 5 days of Pygame knowledge I had for this game, plus the documentation to help me. I wanted the main theme of my game to be a top-down shooter game, with levels and mini-games for the player to unlock more weapons. I also wanted a winter theme, because it's definitely winter right now. It is, definitely. Along with those themes, I also gave it dimensions of 320 by 280 for a pixel art, 16-bit theme as well. So I started with this basic demo that looks like this. Although movement sucks, I rewrote it, but it wasn't that bad. It's just movement. I did however find some screen tearing, which didn't show up on camera, and even after changing the FPS to 60, it didn't go. I then began working on a Pygame map, which is a 2D grid full of numbers that represent sprites. My map started small and I made it pretty simple, but it will expand, trust me. It started out a bit like this, but had to be changed to this to add corner tiles and 4 sides of reverse tiles, if you know what I mean. I then obviously wrote a simple algorithm to turn these numbers into sprites. For our basic map, I also made these sprites. After adding them I got something like this. Not too bad, but I found that repetitive, so I made 3 different types of snow as well, with fixing the issues I explained earlier. Then I began the hard parts. Getting a zoomed in camera that follows the player. This no joke took nearly an entire hour. I found that getting the camera to follow the player and zoom in wasn't too bad, but for some reason the player was just too fast. Like really though, even slowing down the player didn't work, so I gave in. Instead I locked the player to the middle of my screen, and instead move the map. Quite a lot of games do this. I then gave in and gave the player a sprite that looked like this. I then began working on a simple def function to get text showing on our display. And yes, if you cannot tell, I used the best font, Comic Sans. I then added health and stamina UI on our screen, which is kinda just a number like shown. Then I used Python's random module to generate a random snow textures across the map. I then added a rock texture, which the player isn't meant to walk over. But yeah, that took way too long. After another hour of struggling I couldn't get that to work. So instead you just walk half speed over them. Then after more fun testing I decided to double the random generating map width and slightly increased its height. I then added another counter for XP, so the player can level up. I then began working on the sprite for my first enemy. Then I began working on a wave animation shown with the wave text going across the screen, slowing down in the middle, and then speeding up again, and going off the screen. And then I continued that rock idea, but still never got it to work. I then added sprinting that will decrease the stamina bar when used, and then more rock. Wow, looking over the footage, I spent way more than 1 hour on that rock. Then after giving up again, I started working on a generator, which the player will have to destroy to stop it from generating more enemies. And destroying them will complete the round. It's okay, but I'm not a pixel artist. I then added them and made them randomly spawn around the map, although I was having some issues. And more. The thing was that I had no clue how to make these generators on the map than just stuck on the screen. So I subtracted it by the camera position, and that seemed to work. I would also like to say that my day one code is on GitHub, link below, and I recommend you subscribe if you have made it this far. Thank you. I then changed how the generator spawned and used pygame.vector2 to help handle positions. I also used this code here to generate 3 to 5 generators for when to continue to work on the generators being part of the map that used vector 2s. I changed the camera to a vector 2, making them work better together. Next, I began working on the enemy. The next thing I did was work on a minimap, which is essentially just our camera, but shrunk to the top left of our screen. I started with these lines to shrink it, and then loaded it like this after I then changed it to the right aspect ratio. and they play the red and green the generators. For now I will keep the enemy as a red cube. On its class I gave it to init and update functions, so we can spawn and update our enemies. Although I kinda messed up the update. If you cannot tell, display.blit is not what our update function is for. I then made an add enemy function, which I call once every couple of frames per generator in random places. And this is where the hours of struggling to get the enemies to work came in, just because of those 2 lines in the update function. And as you can see, I had some weird bugs attempting to fix this mistake. I then continued with the enemy for the next 20 minutes, vibing to the music. Eventually, however, I kinda got fed up, so thanks VS Code Copilot. So GitHub Copilot on VS Code may or may not fix my code and point out that mistake. Then after switching back to PyCharm, I had it finally worked. We had spawning red enemies. I then finally gave the enemy the Walrus sprite. So next I found a post on Stack Overflow to tell me how you can make enemies track the player, which wasn't so hard. I used this code here, and after a bit more tinkering, as you can see, it works. So yeah, I added some more adjusting to where the enemy goes to, and it's great. And then I noted down all weapons I want and enemies, and their strengths like shown. After a lot more planning, I made this OK pointer, and this abomination of a basic pistol weapon. I made the pointer be the mouse cursor and the gun change its facing direction, depending on where the player is looking at, which took way longer than expected. And that's what I did for day 1. Only 9 hours and 3 minutes of footage. Okay, that's a lot, but I hoped all of you guys enjoyed.